Slowly it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict, hitting you with another preview for Barrett-Jackson upcoming auction, which is the New Orleans 2023 that's happening at the end of September. Now, as I mentioned, if you've been watching these videos, you know that you can go to the auctions and you can go right here to New Orleans. You can click on the docket, the collector car, and then you can filter it by what you are looking for. Of course, we talk about Lincolns here on this channel. We're going to hit search. And when I did this the other day, of course, I started with the 65 custom drop top. I also covered the 65 white, more of a stock car, and I'll be doing deep dives on both of those as well, so please subscribe to the channel. Here, we're going to go over the 66. So there was a big change, of course, that we've kind of documented through Lincoln Addict podcast as well as on this YouTube channel. You could see 65 here, a very sought after year, and 64, 65 are very similar, as I've always said. You could see here 66. I know it's not a blown up photo, but you get a chance to see that the car, of course, the model did change significantly. Now, again, this is a preview, so it's not a deep dive. I'm not going to cover everything. I'm not going to cover little things I see or what I would necessarily really dive into. I do always suggest that you take a look at these cars if you can, or have someone boots on the ground that can get eyes on a car, open the doors, start it, work the top, work the windows. All of that stuff is always going to be true if you can. So when we look at this 66, we have, again, the typical Barrett-Jackson description, which is about a paragraph worth of information. It does mention that it is a 462, which Lincoln did go to in 66. So the 462 was used for about 2.5 years. So 66, 67, and then half of 68, depending on who you talk to. They basically say that once they ran out of the 462s, that's when they went to the 460 in the mid-model year for 68. But this one actually, they state that there is an upgraded camshaft. So that is something you don't typically see, like internal motor work and things like that. But certainly if they did that, great. They do mention that you can't necessarily tell in these photos that it is on air suspension. So again, that may not be everyone's thing. I totally get that. Also 20-inch mob steel wheels. They're often referred to as mob steel, but it's actually technically their kind of sister company, which is Detroit Steel Wheel Co., which is Detroit Steel Wheel Company. They're up in Detroit, American made. These wheels are ultra popular in the kind of truck scene and the car scene, of course, in the Lincoln world as well. Totally get that they're not for everyone. I'm a big fan of these wheels. They've been producing these for a very long time now. Again, made in America, but they do mention that. These I like because they're painted or powder coated to match the beautiful paint on this car that we'll talk about. It does have more than likely a diamond back. I know they're big sellers of these tires. That is, when you look at it, you go, wow, that's kind of a skinny tire, right? Low profile. But this is standard. People are riding on these tires for many, many years, and you can see that there is that white wall as well. So again, more than likely, my guess would be a Diamondback tire. They do mention PPG paint. It's also been cleared, repainted and cleared again. So we'll talk about the paint here when we look at the photos in a little bit more depth. Of course, it has suicide doors. It does have upgraded headlights, kind of the halo headlights, which is a popular thing now, whether you like that or not. And then they mentioned some of the other basic stuff. This is an air-conditioned car, which they mention. It doesn't mention, again, the details of does it work, does it blow cold, things like that. Again, with this overview, or this preview rather, there's a few things I'll point out. Number one, I think the paint is stunning on this. I've been around the automotive world since kind of the mid-90s, going to car shows and just living and breathing cars and trucks. And anytime you're dealing with a black car, certainly, like my friend that's into detailing, he always says, man, they are very, very hard to maintain because any little imperfection shows up. To me, at least in these photos, I mean, this paint looks really, really nice. I think it contrasts well against the Mob Steel, aka Detroit Steel Wheel Co. wheels. We can zoom in here and go ahead and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I always forget it's 9 bars for the grill in 66, and then in 67, again, very hard to tell. This is a very clear picture. In 67, they went 2 higher, which is 11 bars. So 9, 10, 11. Yeah. So there you go. So we know that is correct. It's the correct grill. 66, of course, had the star on the front fender, which we see that as well. We also see back here, and again, don't want to go over too much detail. It is, they do have the feature for the key to be able to put the top down from. That is a factory item. It was a feature from right there. So if somebody needed to put groceries or something else in the trunk of the car, they could easily put the key in there and turn it and take care of it. We see the rear 3/4 shot here. Again, this is kind of a money shot with the hood up, the top pretty much at its peak point. You can leave the tops like this. There's a check valve in there so that it doesn't leak down. I haven't really talked a lot about that, but typically, when people are taking photos, or even if you're at a car show, if you've never thought about this, when the top is up like this allows for the deck lid to remain open and for folks or showgoers to go and look inside the trunk. If the top is totally down, even if the deck lid's still open, you're going to see some in here, of course, but you're not going to see everything because the top is going to be taking up that portion. So whether it's for taking photos or at a car show, certainly people love to do that. I do as well. You could see here from what I see, this looks like a really, really nice car. Again, black. I do like to look over here just to kind of see, are the doors touching whatsoever. Unfortunately, and I didn't really mention this in the last preview, there's, with these photos, there's nothing underneath. There's not a lot for us to go on. So we can kind of only go based upon what we see. But here's that rear 3/4 shot. And of course, you've got the Lincoln kind of star, if you will, on the deck lid, which we refer to these as kind of the deck lid. Some people call them trunk lids. Of course, the sedan models had where you would enter, you would insert the key and unlock it, and then the deck lid would come up this way, right? So like a typical trunk. Of course, you saw over here that, of course, doesn't happen in these convertibles. That's one cool thing about them. The hood is front hinging. The deck lid is kind of rear hinging, if you will. So although you see this, of course, it doesn't move at all on a convertible. There's no keyhole behind it, if that makes sense. Just something I like to point out. Again, not doing a deep dive, but what we can see here, a little bit of bright work in terms of the paint. You may love this, you may hate it. That could easily be changed. There's a few things I see that we'll talk about in the deeper dive video, but for the most part, looks like a pretty clean engine bay. I would assume that these seats had been redone at some point. I tell people all the time, although I had a set of 67 buckets for my 67 that I sold in the past, I'm a big fan of the 61 through 66 seats. And what we see here is in 66, these seats, basically, other than the pattern, they remain the same from the 61 model through 66 for the most part, meaning that in 67, you end up with more safety regulation that comes in, and the seat backs, you start to get into like headrest and things like that, higher back seats and whatnot. But here, I always loved the stainless trim that comes across, and again, that kind of ended, if you will, in 66. Here you get the side shot of the driver's side. Again, you see black paint, black wheels, the suicide doors, of course, with the door handles there, looking good. And then there's the front 3/4 with the top up. And we're kind of back. So, again, what we can see here from the VIN, I'm not going to break all this down, but the number 6 there indicates that it's a 6, meaning we know it's the 1960s, but that 6 stands for 6 as in 1966, which, of course, is the year of this car. However you check out podcasts, I would just remind you, you could search Lincoln Addict via pretty much any app, including Pandora, or you can go to LincolnAddict.com and listen there for free. There's more content. I am working on new episodes. Thank you for the continued support. And as always, I appreciate any positive comments, whether you like it or maybe there's something I missed, or maybe there's something you want me to cover in the deep dive that I'm going to do on these Barrett-Jackson New Orleans, if you will, 2023 inaugural auction. Thanks so much for the support. Stay on the rise, everyone.